We're talking today with Justin Wolfram of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right, okay, so Justin, so begin at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
I was born June 13th, 1985 in Port Angeles, Washington.
All right, and then did you grow up there or did you move around?
Well, I come from a Coast Guard family.
Okay.
My dad served about 20 years in the Coast Guard all around the United States. But at that time when I was born, he was stationed in, I forgot the name, but it's a Macaw reservation out of Cape Flattery.
Mm-hmm.
St. Ignace. Yeah, I believe it was St. Ignace. No, it wasn't. Anyway.
Okay. So that's out in Washington is where you start. And then where else did you live when you were a kid?
So when I was about 3 or so years old, we moved to Michigan. And my dad was stationed at a couple different stations, Kinchlow, mostly UP. And then we moved to California when I was about 7. And then we moved back to Michigan. And we moved to California again. You know, like, you know how it is in the military when you transfer to different bases and different stations every couple of years. So yeah, I grew up moving a lot.
Okay. So where'd you go to high school?
Mainly in a town called Three Rivers, Michigan.
Okay.
So it's just south of Kalamazoo, a little ways. Small city.
Wouldn't be a Coast Guard base there, or was he out of the Coast Guard by then?
That's when he was out by that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then did you graduate from there?
Yes.
And what year did you graduate?
2004.
Okay. Now, so 9/11 happens while you're in high school. What do you remember about that?
We're in our, I think it was our home study class, something, just working on our homework. And a teacher comes running down the hall. I think it was Mrs. Gay. She came running down the hall and told all the teachers, turn on your TVs to the news. And we could tell by the panic in her voice that it was something really serious. And immediately when the TV flipped on, you just see the Twin Towers smoking. And it was right after the first strike. And then they're like, a plane just ran in, and we're all like, oh my God. At this point, we had no clue what was going on. It looked like an accident at that point. And as we're watching it live, sitting in class, the second plane struck the towers, and we all instantly knew it was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Someone attacked us. So that's when the shock set in, like we're under attack as a nation. But yeah, we all stayed glued to the TV for that day because it's such a significant thing that was happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Now, did that have any influence on your decision to go into the service, or were you going to do that anyway?
I think it may have had some influence in some ways, but generally speaking, no. I grew up in a military family. My grandfather served in the Army Air Corps. My uncle served in the Navy. My dad served Coast Guard. You know, I ended up going to the Marines. Cousin went Marines. Sister went Air Force. Kind of a family tradition.
Okay. Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
It's a funny story. I actually planned on going Air Force. But when I went to the recruiter, I think I weighed like 200 pounds even. Well, I'd been a lineman in football, so I was a bigger guy. I knew I had to lean down. But I walked in and the recruiter's like, you're too fat. We can't even talk to you. And I was like, seriously? And they're like, come back in 3 months or something like that if you lose some weight. And I was like, oh my, can't even talk to me. And they're like, nope. And so I walked out of the recruiting station, and it's like a movie or something like that. And there's a sergeant standing out the Marine Corps right next door, and he's like, huh, they kicked you out, huh? He's like, come talk to us. And I was like, Marines, really? And they're like, yeah, come talk to us. So he's like, what do you want to do in the Air Force? And I said, I want to work with aviation. You know, that's been my dream since I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And he's like, the Marine Corps has got a huge Air Force. And I'd known they had jets and helicopters and stuff like that. So he instantly appealed to that. I'm like, well, if I can't do it in the Air Force, might as well look into the Marines. But at that point, I was still doubting whether or not I could be a Marine, you know. And they said, tell you what, you are overweight, but we're going to work with you. Come into the Puli program with us, and we'll get you in shape and ready to ship.
Puli program?
It's just what they called before you go off to boot camp.
Okay.
It's like a preparatory phase to get you ready for the fitness requirements of boot camp. So the first time I ever ran 6 miles, didn't even know it was possible, but we were just running with cadence and knocked out 6 miles, and I'm like, oh my, I might be able to do this, you know? So that inspired a lot of confidence in me, and yeah, I went with the Marines.
Okay. So when do you actually enter the service?
November 2004.
All right.
I had enlisted in, I believe it was January. I believe that's when I was adjudicated for my clearance, when everything started for me. But then I was kind of put on hold because they guaranteed me my position.
Okay.
But the caveat to that was I had to wait till the slots open to fill it. So I had done everything ready to go until the slot opened in like November.
Okay. So what did you do in the meantime?
Worked at a factory.
Okay.
Just like a lot of people do in Southwest Michigan. I worked at a factory called TN Trailers in Shipshawana, shipping and receiving.
All right. So now, okay, so where did you do your boot camp?
MCRD San Diego.
All right. That's the recruiting depot there. Yeah, okay.
It's a recruit depot. Yeah, it's right next to the airport, which I didn't know if that was better than South Carolina or not, but we got to see all the flights coming in and leaving and the beautiful city outside, but we couldn't touch it. So that's kind of is beautiful, but kind of taunting you know.
All right. So basically what happens? So you fly out to San Diego, and then what happens from there?
Start getting yelled at.
Okay.
Right away. They give you orders right from the beginning. You fly in, go to the USO, and then they pick you up from the USO, and it starts at the USO. Get on the bus, don't look up. Loudest you ever heard anyone yelling at you, you know, and then march you out on the yellow footprints and start doing the briefings, and then they keep you awake for a couple days.
All right. So what are you doing over the course of that couple of days?
In-dock stuff. It's hard to remember everything because you're just getting shuffled around by the numbers, you know. You're just standing at attention and shuffling. But they're giving you uniforms. They have a scripted line. You have to call your family and tell them you arrived. Don't get to talk to anyone. You just say the script. Strip down. That's when you leave everything behind. You strip down, and then they give you uniforms and tell you to put on one sock at a time. Go get your hair shaved off. which wasn't a very pleasant process. We call it the grape scrape for a reason. Funny thing, one of the barbers missed a patch on top of my head, and the drill instructor yelled at me, and he's like, "Go tell that a-hole to fix that right now." And I didn't want to go tell as the guy with the shears, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he made me go back and repeat that verbatim, like, "Hey, oh, you forgot." And then he's like, "Get over here and scrape my head over the trash can just to make sure." And then smack me back in line, you know. And we just shuffled along. All the briefings on UCMJ, you know, where we're going to start things. They keep you awake for, I think, the first 36 hours or something like that. You just become a zombie after a while. Yeah.
All right.
And then you go to your in-dock platoon.
All right. And then when you're getting into the actual training, what does that consist of in boot camp?
Oh my, a lot. They start you out. They're the phases.
Mm-hmm.
So first phase, second phase, third phase, and like you start out wearing sneakers, or we call them go fasters, and you got your little boot, your pants rolled up, and you look like a goofball. You're not even wearing your uniform correctly, but it's kind of to delineate what stage you're in. They're teaching you to march, teaching you how to handle your rifle correctly, how to make a your rack, your bed, how to fold your clothes, how to sweep the floor, how to clean the toilet. Just they run you through the numbers on everything. And meanwhile, you have like physical training and stuff. You're learning obstacle course, whatever. That's the first phase is just getting used to the policies, procedures, standards, you know, everything. And then like the marching ditties and how you respond to people appropriately, standing duty. And then the second phase we got into, and I don't know if it's the same how long the Marine Corps did it this way, but we went into our like field week, grass week, range week, crucible week, where we went up to Pendleton, and that was interesting because there was an El Nino in Baja California, and we were getting hit with wave after wave of rain while I was in the field. Yeah, Staff Sergeant Jackson, he's like, "If it ain't raining, we ain't training." And we're all like, "Yeah, but you can go back to your hooch and change. We can't."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of rough.
Because rain in desert makes mud, right?
We had to hike in the mountains, and they become very slick when it's raining. So we had some accidents, people falling down hills and stuff like that. One of our guys fell face first into a cactus.
Ugh.
Fell, but yeah, it was interesting. And then we did our bivouacs. We went out and dig our fighting holes. You know, like learn how to throw a grenade, obstacle courses, hiking. You know, how to pack our packs correctly, how to set up our, you know, like our bivouac and our shelter halves and everything. I'm sure all that's changed a little bit now. We had the old Alice packs, the metal frame one. That wasn't nice.
All right. And then do you go back again to San Diego to complete the process, or?
Yes. So this is where I've heard it told different by different people. We actually did our crucible in the second phase, and
Explain what a crucible is.
you're awake for, forgot how many hours. It's over 2 days. 2-3 days you're awake, and you barely get any sleep or any food rations. And we were in the cold and wet, and we just constantly moving to one training area after another and proving that we know how to do the things they trained us to do. So, and then you have all these like team challenges, and you have to overcome. They're all named by, you know, they have the names of like the John Basilone obstacle course, or, you know, they have significance, but they want to test if you're functioning as a unit. But then the crucible is pretty rough. You're drained, completely drained, and then you got to climb up a mountain. I was one of the first people up in my platoon. I was a good hiker because I had lost the weight, you know. And they made me a squad leader when I reached the top with my senior drill instructor. That was short-lived, but still cool. And that's when, oftentimes when people finish the crucible, that's when they said they received their Eagle Globe and Anchor, signifying that they became Marine. We did not. We didn't get that until the last phase, which we were discussing, when you go back to MCRD San Diego, and you're doing all your final drill inspections. At this point, we already finished the range. I had an expert badge to wear. That was kind of cool.
So is that as a marksman or?
Expert's the highest you get without going like distinguished or shooting team or something like that. Marksman, sharpshooter, expert, and everyone in my family who served in the military always shot expert, because we come from a family, military service and shooting, everyone's really good. So I wanted to live up to that legacy. So I was really proud when I got my expert, because it meant I was following everyone. My sister, Air Force, she got an expert too, which was kind of cool.
All right. Now, so overall, how well did you do in training?
Probably average. As far as physically, mentally, emotional stability, like receiving my training, everything. I wasn't the fittest person. I wasn't the fattest person, you know. I did everything I was supposed to do. Academically, I was one of the highest in my platoon, if not the highest. But yeah, probably average.
All right. Well, I guess you had mentioned before the interview that sometimes being the best at something or better at something could kind of make you a target or stand out.
Oh, yeah.
And did any of that happen during training, or is that
in boot camp, not so much.
Okay.
They never let us sleep enough, so you're always feeling like a zombie in the classes. But I would always pass my knowledge stuff. Yeah, it was easy.
Okay.
The stuff they had us learning was simple.
All right. And so how long was the boot camp?
13 weeks.
Okay. And then what happens to you after that?
You get a couple weeks of leave, called boot leave, but it's pretty standard. My family was able to come out to San Diego and watch my graduation, and then we went back to Michigan for a while. And one of the sad things was that my family house burnt down while I was in boot camp. So I came home to the wreckage, and that just happened, and staying in a hotel with my family as they're adjusting to this serious incident that just kind of wrecked our family's life. Luckily, no humans died. Maybe some injury, but no one in my family died, other than our pets. But coming home to that was a little strange. Felt bad for my family going through that, and I couldn't be there to support them in any way. But they all knew I was going through boot camp. They all served in military families, so they pretty much just let me do my thing. Exchange letters, you know.
Right.
But yeah, we made it through boot camp, graduated, and went back to Michigan for about 2 weeks, 10 days maybe, and then after that went to the School of Infantry. Every Marine goes to School of Infantry. It's either ITB, Infantry Training Battalion, or MCT, Marine Combat Training. So if you're staying infantry, you go one. The rest of the Marines go to the other, which is more of a condensed infantry course.
Okay, and that's at Camp Pendleton?
Yes, I was in Camp Pendleton, and I absolutely love that. That's when I started realizing I enjoyed being in the Marine Corps.
Okay, so what are you doing? Just kind of field maneuvers and?
You learn to, infantry tactics and stuff like that. You learn to be a basic rifleman, fire and maneuver, mount town, which means military operations in urban terrain. Anything that would be like considered basic level for going into a combat scenario, you learn. Even live fire training, where you're moving together, shooting at targets, live fire, handling various machine guns, AT-4, rocket launcher, you name it. Mm-hmm. You're going through, the 203 grenade launcher was fun. But you just learn to shoot everything, how to do basic maintenance on everything. How to set up perimeters, different base level stuff to learn to go into combat, because the Marine Corps, I guess, learned that even their cooks get pulled into combat occasionally, mm-hmm. So you better know how to shoot.
Well, it's always been a thing. Every Marine is a rifleman first.
Better know how to shoot and scoot, which actually benefited me later on. But I went into aviation. So after I finished all that training, I went to Pensacola, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, for my training. And this, when I went through, it was airframes and hydraulics that I guess headquarters Marine Corps, whoever comes up with your orders.
Okay.
I didn't get to choose AVI or electrician or anything like that. It's just aviation maintenance, and then they kind of put you where there's an opening. So I went to the basic, they call it the A school there. Had the time of my life. I loved it there. It was right after the hurricane. I don't know if it was Katrina, but it wrecked NAS Pensacola. Like half the buildings were destroyed. But they were just rebuilding the MWR, and but I had a really good buddy there, Casey Husk, and we'd go off base and go fishing, go scuba diving, you name it. We'd always be down for an adventure. I think he was from Colorado, so I'm from Michigan, he's from Colorado. We were outdoorsy guys, and we went and found some fun in Pensacola. Went scuba diving in Spring Lakes, and you name it. It was fun.
And then how long are you in Pensacola?
We actually got delayed there. I don't know what was going on at the time. But I remember I stayed there probably a lot longer than I should have. It was like 5 months or something like that. I thoroughly enjoyed being in Pensacola, and I graduated, honor graduate, and got a meritorious promotion to Lance Corporal there, which was funny because I started as a private, mm-hmm. and then PFC, and immediately Lance Corporal. Yeah. So people who were PFCs when I was a private, now they're PFCs when I'm a Lance Corporal, right. And they're like, "Hey, I just outranked you. Why are you?" And I'm like, It happens.
Okay. And after you complete that training, where do you get sent?
NAF, Naval Air Facility, Lemoore, California. It's outside of Fresno. And it's a dry lake bed. Mm-hmm. It's a desert. It's kind of inhospitable. But again, I had the time of my life. I loved my training. I loved my school.
Was this just a more advanced school you were at this point?
Yeah, it's a C school. It's when you start learning your specific platform. So, which is funny, I was an honor graduate in my A school, and the CO, he is like, we cracked the code. If you graduate honor grad and get, we're going to guarantee you to go where you want to go as far as like what kind of aircraft you want to fly on, And are we allowed to curse?
Sure.
Okay. So the guy from headquarters Marine Corps was a sergeant, and he's like, I don't give a damn what your CO said. It's from headquarters Marine Corps, bitch. Mm-hmm. And then I was bummed because I was the only one in my class that stated I wanted to be on helicopters.
Okay.
And I was the only one to go to F-18 squadron out of my whole class. The irony. And what's funny was the instructor was warning us ahead of time where we should go and where we shouldn't go. And I ended up in the exact shop he had warned us about.
Okay.
But it was at a training squadron, F-18 Hornets. But yeah, in Lemoore, it's a naval air station, and out in the middle of nowhere. So we would take MWR trips to Knott's Berry Farm or whatever we could do to keep busy. One of my best friends in the world to this day, a good man, he ended up being my friend by accident. So when I think it was our barracks NCO gave me the wrong room number, and we had the key cards or whatever, and I ended up walking into the wrong room. My key card didn't work for it. He meant to give me the room next door, but this guy I was a roommate with, Jason Hernandez, we had a really good dynamic. We pushed each other. He was an AVI guy. He was like communication navigation systems and a real techie guy, very smart. And we would challenge each other on everything, going to the gym, running in the morning. We'd wake up and we're both in tune with each other. We'd wake up to music and do our stretches, morning stretches, and get out there before anyone else. We always passed our room inspections flawless. Our uniform inspections, I had the time of my life there. Like, I was hoping the Marine Corps would be as good as the training was. Mm-hmm. The training environment was wonderful, had a lot of support. But then I went to my squadron after that.
Okay. And what squadron was that, and where was it?
It was a VMFAT, which stands for Fixed Wing Marine Fighter Attack Training Squadron 101 in Miramar, California.
Okay.
I worked on F-18 Hornets there. It's a training squadron for the pilots that were going to deploying units. They could learn their specific platform better and then go to a deploying unit to go off to Iraq and Afghanistan at the time. It's the largest squadron on the base. We had, I think, up to 42 jets at any given time. A standard squadron has like 12. I think we had space for 48 or something like that. So probably roughly 4 times the size of a normal squadron. But the problem was we couldn't deploy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're training everyone else. All right. And when were you there? What was the time frame?
2005 is when I arrived.
Were you there till 07?
Yeah, 2005 to 2007, I was in Myanmar working at 101, the sharpshooters. It's a decommissioned squadron now. So they switched over to the F-35 Lightning IIs. So the F-18 Legacy Hornets, you know, they're no more.
Now, did that transition happen after you left?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay,
This
so
is
you
just
worked in
recently.
F-18s. So what was your daily life like there?
Work, and more work. Working on the flight line, it's a labor of love. You love your job. I loved working on aircraft. I love the smell when you go out in the morning and hearing some of the jets firing up and smelling the jet fuel and hearing the engines, you know. There's something about it. It's serene. It's what I always imagined when I was a young boy. I have my earliest picture, one of my earliest pictures I still have is on my 5th birthday. I was at the Kalamazoo Air Zoo standing in front of a Super Sabre because I was so excited about aviation. And here I am at 19, standing on the flight line, watching the flight ops ramping up for the morning, you know, and it was surreal to me that I had the opportunity to work on this flight line and be part of the show, you know. And it's where Top Gun was filmed, so, you know, seeing it from the other side when you're actually there on base, being part of the operations was really cool. I worked in the airframes division, which was large. It's a pretty technical job, but it also takes a lot of beating on stuff, you know, because you're working on fabricating or fixing components of aircraft, using giant torque bars and, you know, like lifting APUs or servos and moving them across the flight line, heavy toolboxes, you name it. But it's so busy, the dynamic, and you're running all day long. Trying to get the birds up and ready to fly.
Okay. And how long are the shifts?
I think technically for us it was day crew, night crew. So it was like 12 hours each one, but then you have your ATAF, which is all tools accounted for, FOD walkdowns, briefings, debriefings, and stuff like that. There's always some crossover between the shifts, but I would say at minimum 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, but then we started working 6 days a week for a while. So we're pulling some serious hours, and I wasn't even deploying.
Okay. Did you get to go off base at all, or was there anything else that you could do or have any energy to do?
Yes. Living in the back door of San Diego was incredible. My buddy Dustin was selling his car. Looked pretty good. It was all blacked out, nice exhaust, everything. Fit right in with San Diego. So took out my first loan and bought that one from the lemon lot, they call it, but it was in great condition. And we'd go off base, you know, four of us would pile into the car, and when we were in Liberty, we could go off base and we go explore the town, go to Old Town, Gas Lamp, go to ball games. We always got free tickets to ball games through MWR or some other event.
Yep.
We'd go to Padres or the Chargers or something like that. Which is funny because we got invited to one. It was a Padres. We're unfurling the giant American flag for the whole field, you know. And I told my buddy Eric, he's actually here now. We've been friends for over 20 years now. I'd known him from training. We weren't in the same platoon, but we had a lot of crossover when we were on working parties and other stuff. And he's a goofy guy, and I like being goofy too, so we got along real well. You know, you have to have a sense of humor when you're scrubbing the same, brassoing the same drain cover for the third time that day, on a working party. But when he got to Myanmar, I don't know exactly when he arrived or when he got into squadron or whatever, but I know when I was there, I told him, hey, go throw on your dress blues. And he's like, hell no, I'm not throwing on my dress blues. I'm like, it's for a special occasion. And so we threw on our dress blues and went and got in the game, and we had free tickets and everything, and everyone was so kind to us. Seeing us in uniform, young guys, they'd come up and bring us hot dogs and offer us beers and, you name it. Like, people were so kind to us. They gave us a shout out on the big screen, and yeah, it was wonderful living in San Diego.
All right. But there was a basic problem with the job, right?
Oh my. Yeah. So the squadron, I got locked in the airframes division, and I saw so many people cycling in and out of the unit going to deploying squadrons. It was a normal thing to happen because they want you to do your rotations overseas at this point. Everybody's going to Iraq, Afghanistan. All my friends are deploying, and no matter how much I volunteer or go up the chain of command, I can't move. It became very frustrating to me. I had done everything to make myself competitive. I picked up probably faster than I should have with my rank, because I picked up faster than the other people who had been there for a while. I was a corporal NCO before other people, because I always stayed competitive, got every qualification I could do, working on my McMap belts, they call it Marine Corps Martial Arts belts, on my own time, stuff like that. Always stayed as competitive as I could be, and I thought that would sell me on other squadrons. And they're like, yeah, we want this guy, let's take him on deployment. No, it had the opposite effect. It locked me into the squadron, and my monitor wouldn't let me go. And they had these little career fairs they would set up, and I would always go to the career fairs, and my career retention specialist, she's like, I can't get this to work. Your monitor's got you locked down. And I said, what is something I can do? And she said, the MSG recruiters, Marine Security Guard recruiters, will be through it. Talk to them. And I was like, okay. So I applied for that. I loved my job. I loved working on aircraft. It's what I wanted to do since I was a little kid. So it was kind of heartbreaking for me to leave that. But I was just feeling like a hamster on a wheel. No matter what my ambitions were, it wasn't coming to fruition. So I had to make a different approach. So we call it going ground side. Like, you go from the wing back to the... So I applied for MSG, and the recruiters came, did everything, got approved, got adjudicated for my top secret clearance, everything we need. And then I believe it was 3TAC 07 was the class. I went to MSG Schoolhouse. And San Diego was fantastic, and like I said, really enjoyed being there. I had a lot of freedom. Found out very quickly I'm almost always the DD the designated driver for
Okay.
any group because I refuse to drink and drive.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't ever worth the risk for me, losing a rank or getting someone hurt or anything like that. For me, some people push it. I didn't.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then we were talking about you made the switch to becoming a security guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So we was talking about, okay. So where were you doing your training for that?
It was in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay.
It was right next to headquarters Marine Corps. They tore down that building or rebuilt it or something, and they moved the schoolhouse to a new facility. I believe they call it now the U.S. Embassy Quantico, because it's a mock-up of an embassy just to train the Marines on how to safeguard the diplomatic missions. And it has all the real-world equipment and tactics and everything you use but you train in Quantico. We do a lot of shooting on various different weapons, smoke grenades, shotguns, M4s. We had the Beretta M9. We practice on the SMG. It's a submachine gun. And it was both tactics. So you would learn room clearing, all the essential stuff to actually perform your duties. But then also we had to learn the diplomatic side of it. And they were doing psychological screening and everything and monitoring us, peer reviews, whatever, through the process to make sure that we would fit in a diplomatic environment. Because not every jarhead's good for
Yeah.
They wanted to kind of weed out the people they didn't think could fit in a diplomatic environment, because you're going to be issued a diplomatic passport and you're going to be traveling with diplomats and living abroad with diplomats. They can call us the ambassadors in blue, engaging in community stuff. Every place has a community liaison officer, and you interact with different things in the community. So they gave us an allowance to go out and buy suits and ties and shoes and everything. So we call it DOS attire, Department of State attire. So you have your military uniforms, and then you have your DOS attire. Different uniforms for different situations, but you have to be able to do both. So we all got our suits fitted, and one of the cool things I really enjoyed there, when we're doing our shoot house training, we're using simunition. It stings, but it's a lot of fun. It's real ballistic, but it's plastic rounds filled with detergent-based paint.
Mm-hmm.
Washes out of your uniform. But man, when you get hit with those, it reminds you got hit. It hurts more than a paintball, and it sounds real, and you're firing it from a real weapons platform. And we did that a lot of different scenarios when we're at Hogan's Alley at the FBI Academy. So using their facility and running around and doing our shoot house training, and then watching them, like breaching a hotel next door. It was really cool. It was a really cool situation. It's a mock-up town, and it's got pharmacies, grocery stores, dry cleaning, you name it. It's all facades. It's all fake. It's just there for training, except for the sub shop. That was open for lunch.
All right.
That was some good training. I really enjoyed that.
And about how long were you there?
think it was just under 2 months. Somewhere around 2 months, I was in Quantico before I got my orders to my first duty station. They keep you guessing until the very last moment. So they'll say, I think I had The Hague, Netherlands, and then last minute they changed me, and I'm like, oh no. Am I going to Djibouti, or am I going to Ouagadougou, or, some Timbuktu? And they said, no, Santiago, Chile. And everyone's like, what? So yeah, Santiago, Chile.
Okay. Did you know any Spanish?
No.
Okay. So hadn't taken it in school or anything?
No.
Okay.
I had actually taken French in high school. No, I can't say I knew any Spanish when I went there. And they speak a interesting dialect, Castellano, they call it, but it's a little bit different than a lot of other Spanish. And I took lessons. Wasn't very fluent, but I had fun.
All right. So what was life like there? Where were you living and what were you doing?
We lived on the most picturesque sloping hillside. I believe Monkewe was the big hill that we were on the eastern slope of, facing towards the cliff faces of the Andes Mountains.
Okay.
I mean, Santiago's nestled inside of the Andes Mountains, but we're on the hillside with the most scenic, picturesque, uninterrupted view of the Andes mountain range. Couldn't believe it. It was walking out every morning with your coffee and looking out on your balcony. We couldn't believe it. It never got old. Never got old. Worked at the embassy, so we had drivers. Every detachment has dedicated drivers, up armored vehicles. We have guards. We have staff that help us with the living accommodations, like cooks and maid services and stuff like that, to keep us focused on our mission. And we have to be able to react to a situation at the embassy or any other U.S. mission at a moment's notice. And we always practice that. Training was continuous. It never stops. Which is kind of funny. The diplomats get used to the Marines running around in their gear, going through training scenarios every week, in the embassy. They get so used to seeing us in our battle dress, flags, Kevlars, NVGs sometimes, they got used to it, which was kind of funny. I really enjoyed being in the diplomatic community. The people were really kind. They would always bring us food. People would always stop by post and bring us food, and they took care of us because we were a lot younger than the average person there. They often took us under their wing outside of work, and they'd really take care of us and invite us to all kinds of things, family dinners, events, going out in town. And because we were part of the community, we got invited to a lot of other things, like the Hippodrome, I believe it was called. It's the racing association. So we got in the presidential booth. Me and one of the guys are like, "You want to go?" "Yeah, I want to go." The tickets, threw on our suits and went to the presidential box of the racing association in Santiago, Chile, and we're betting on horses, and having the time of our life, The president of the racing association was pouring us drinks and bringing out food, and events like that happen quite often, which was cool. It was my first horse race, and I believe the horse's name was 6 Furlongs, and he won 14-1 odds. So my first time I won big, right in front of them. I was like, that's a win. But I have so many stories of cultural events that we did and people I met. That working at the embassy was nice, but being in South America, although it's not a war zone, there's a lot of instability in the region surrounding it, and that can lead to tensions. And we did have actual emergencies we had to respond to. But nothing serious at the time. We did have a driver there that during the Pinochet era, he survived a RPG encounter. And he told us, a little tiny guy, he's funny, he told us the story. But I guess a guy lined up with an RPG and shot at the Marine vehicle was targeting the Marines. This was before I was there. And the driver, all he could think to do was just run the guy over. Hopefully get him before he shoots off his rocket. But what he inadvertently did was he closed the gap for the arming distance of the RPG. And it lodged in the engine block, and it did not explode. And it did not kill him or the Marines in the car. His quick thinking, his intuition to charge at the guy saved everyone's life. So there were incidents, but when I was there, I think it was Michelle Bachelet was the president at the time, and it was a pretty stable, generally speaking, for South America. Traveled around a bit. I enjoyed my job, and I enjoyed everything we did outside the job. We had debt snowboards, because they have some of the best ski resorts in Santiago, Chile. Some of the best in the world. You go up in the Andes Mountains, and we were all snowboarding there.
All right. Now, assignments like that, is that generally a year rotation? Or?
Generally a year,
okay.
And more or less. They try to keep you in your rotation.
Okay. And so, where do you go next?
Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
When I was in Santiago, I started doing my flight training, and they had a glider port down the hill from where I lived. And there was a retired U.S. Marine fighter pilot that was teaching at this school. And he started, I was flying with him in the sailplanes. Had the time of my life. This guy, he taught me some good stuff. That was one of the things I enjoyed most, is actually starting to fly. Yeah, I have fond memories of Chile. It was a wonderful time there. And then after that, I went to Baku, Azerbaijan.
Okay, so what was that like?
The city of wind and fire. Baku is one of the strangest and most unique places I've ever been in my life, or even heard of. It's on the Caspian Sea. It's in the Caucasian mountain range, but it's also attached to Iran, Armenia, Russia, Georgia, Turkey, and it's had weird topography. In the south it was desert, in the north it was the mountains. It was right on the sea. You travel one direction, it feels like you're in Iraq. You travel in the other direction, it feels a temperate forest. It's a whole different, it's incredible. But it's also in a region that's unstable. We did have situations where there were cells operating in our vicinity that were bad actors, that were not pro-American because of our proximity to Iran and other. This was during the height of Iraq and Afghanistan wars, you know. And I was a little northeast or northwest of what was going on in those places. They were in a war with Armenia. It just recently ended, but like they had their Nagorno-Karabakh enclave and all the hostilities between the different cultures. It's a former Soviet country, but they're Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
And they speak a form of Turkish, Turkic. And then some of them speak Farsi, you know, like it's an amalgamation of so many different cultures and topography and history, and it's one of the strangest places, most unique places I've ever been, and I had the time of my life there.
Right. How did most of the people seem to view or treat the Americans?
It was a mix. Anywhere you go, it's a mix. We already had a large community when we arrived. Whenever we arrive somewhere, there's already the diplomatic community in place. So you're not starting from scratch. You're welcomed right into the community, and you start to branch out from there if you want to explore more of the host nation, you know. And so we had a strong community right off the bat, set us up to be very comfortable. We lived in a very nice house. We had an indoor heated pool, sauna, full gym, very opulent in that location because you can afford it over there, you know. It had to be in a walled-in compound, and we lived very nice there. The embassy was not so great. It's like a converted old hotel right across the street from the KGB training. I don't know, it was weird. Mm-hmm. We'd have random things like gas leaks from the city municipality. But we did a lot of cross-training with elements in their host country. But we had an anthrax scare at the time. That was during that time. And other serious situations, but I never had to engage in combat, which I am glad about. Even though I've been in combat zones in service and after service, I've never had to engage with an enemy. Even though I did training continuously, I am fortunate that I never had to. And I know that seeing all my buddies that came back, but yeah, back to Azerbaijan, had a lot of friends there. Dated a Russian ballerina for a little while. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Okay.
Crazy and wonderful. I went on some USAID things they did. I was invited by the director, and I did public speaking for a youth leadership training they were doing in conjunction with the Peace Corps and stuff. I had a wonderful time there.
Okay. And so then where do you go after that?
Valletta, Malta.
Okay.
Which is a little misleading. It used to be, the embassy used to be in Valletta, but they actually changed the district a little bit, and it was in Floriana, but they weren't going to change the name.
Okay.
So even though we're in Floriana, it's called U.S. Embassy Valletta. It's still called U.S. Embassy Valletta, even now that it's moved out to Ali. That's the name of the place, to Ali. It's near the Medina, or Mdina. In Arabic cultures, they say Medina, but in Malta, it's Mdina. the Silent City, which is beautiful.
Now, was this all on the same island as Valletta, or are they different?
Yes.
Smaller?
So there's Malta, Gozo, Camino, little sporadic islands like St. Paul's and Filfila, which has an interesting history on its own because it was during World War II. It was used as a artillery range. But Malta was incredible. I was very comfortable because they speak two languages there, primarily because they're a British colony, English and Maltese, which is an amalgam language. It's really hard to learn, especially if no experience with Arabic or any of the regional dialects there. It's a unique amalgam language. But it's this tiny archipelago right off the coast of Sicily. It's just a speck in the water, smack dab in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. And we lived in Medlina at the time, which was at like this hilltop, and we had a villa. There's no address to the villa. They just listed the villa's name, and everybody knew where it was at. You know. We used to host diplomatic parties there and personal parties, and we had a big pool that was shaped like a heart overlooking half the island. You know, we had a bar and pool table and you name it. We used to host all kinds of events there. Downtown was nice. The people were nice. I got heavily into scuba diving while I was there. I was going scuba diving, I think on average 2 days a week, which might include 2 times per each day or whatever, but starfish diving school. And Sean was my instructor at the time. He was a former British Royal Marine, and he knew I was a Marine Sergeant, so we kicked it off right away. And we just spoke the same language. He knew what he could expect from me. I knew what I could expect from him, not the average people, you know. So he always would drive me to do things better, you know, put me through more like stress inoculation when you induce stressful situations so that when it actually occurs, you're prepared for it and you don't panic. I started leading dives. I went through the full training up to master scuba diver, you know, rescue diver, everything. And then when I got out, when I EAS from the Marine Corps, I actually came back to Malta to finish my dive master internship and become a professional scuba diver, and did my tech wreck diving there as well. That was my biggest hobby in Malta. And we're right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, and you have sort of the lagoon or the area between the space between the islands and things like that. So there were sheltered waters and the open waters. And
I can tell you stories about that. Yeah, so most of our diving we did was in Tirkawa, which is where the ferry goes up to Gozo. But they have the P-29, the tugboat Rosie, a couple other really good dive sites there, and that's where we do some of our deeper shipwreck dives. And people really enjoyed it there. But we went to Zanor Point once, and we were going to go to these twin boats in a bay. Well, we decided to stay in the bay for a night dive, me and my buddy McMinamy. That was a mistake. There was a storm off the coast, and we're like, well, we'll stay out of the main water, we'll stay in a bay and we'll be fine. Or so we thought. water was a lot more silty and kicked up than we anticipated, and we ended up getting swept out to sea. Luckily, our driver was a certified scuba instructor, Julian, and he kept an eye on us. We could see him on shore, like flashing us with a flashlight and stuff. Like, we knew if we ever got in a bad situation, he would know exactly what to do to get us out of it. But me and Tom were like, this is some open water. We're gonna have to get back to shore. We're getting swept out quick, and the waves kept getting bigger. And so me and him, we didn't cut against the current. We went diagonal to the current to get back to land and then make it back to where we were at. We swam hard for like 40 minutes to get back to shore. We couldn't even stand up afterwards, but we made it back.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to get rescued. The next stop was Tunisia, if we got swept out to sea.
Mm-hmm.
Tunis,
Yeah.
Tunisia.
All right. So that was Malta. That was your last assignment?
Yes.
Okay.
Good times and bad times, but generally speaking, I thoroughly enjoyed living in Malta, and I loved the people. It felt like a second home to me.
All right. But you decided at that point not to re-enlist?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. Going into the military, I knew I was going to be a lifer, but at a certain point, I realized I loved the Marine Corps, but didn't love me back. I dedicated so much effort and time and everything into everything I did, and it would not always be appreciated, reciprocated. Sometimes it puts a target on your back when you're getting a promotion to a position someone else wants or something like that. You put yourself in a position to get knocked down, I was doing the best I could, but I realized at a certain point the best I can do is limited by other people's choices when you're in the military. And I said, well, if I stay in, I have to be an officer, so I have a little bit more say in my realm. At this point, I'd already finished an associate's and was working on my bachelor's degree. So I got out, and I started talking to, I was going to, started with the Connecticut Flight Academy, and I was flying, and I was applying to become a pilot in the Army National Guard. Unfortunately, at this time, I got sick, and the VA actually diagnosed me, but it's attributed to multiple chemical exposures while in service. There's no way for me to pass a flight physical for the military at that point. So that dashed my dream of becoming a military aviator.
Mm-hmm.
However, I still fly different platforms, private, personal flying, But yeah, I went into the military, and like I told you, I was planning on Air Force. One of my uncles was Air Force, and he told me all about it. And one of my grandfathers, Army Air Corps, and I thought it would be right. If I had it to do again, I wouldn't do it the same. I don't regret being a Marine. I have the best brothers in the world. The friends I made in the Corps are true friends, and they're my friends to this day, 20 years later.
So what did you wind up doing for a job after you got out then? If you couldn't go on and become a pilot or whatever, what did you do?
Took me some time to adjust. I was disgruntled for a while because I realized I'm gonna have to refocus my life. I got into government contracting through the State Department, and I not exactly the same thing, not diplomatic protection, but I got into a TS, top secret required job. You can go on clearancejobs.gov or whatever and see all the stuff that's available for people with clearances, and then based on what your background is and what qualifications and stuff. So I started working at with overseas building operations whenever they put up new structures, renovate structures, anything like that at any U.S. missions abroad. They need support to go in and provide some of the security element. So, paid well.
Okay. So where did you wind up going on that job?
That's a long list.
Okay. Well, did you go to like Iraq or Afghanistan, or did you just go to places in the area?
No matter how much and this is the crazy thing, no matter how many times I volunteered to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, it never happened. Both in service and contracting outside of service.
Okay. So where'd you go instead?
There was one time I almost ended up in Afghanistan, but this was when I was in the flight academy and I wanted to finish there, and I told them I couldn't deploy right at that time, which I'm glad, because when my flight arrived at the airport, 3 U.S. contractors were killed when they came in the airport from their flight into country.
Okay.
So I'm glad I didn't take that flight. But every other time I tried, it wasn't happening. I went to China. I was working out of Guangzhou and Shenzhen at times. China was interesting. Then I went to Rabat, Morocco. Rabat was it was nice. Underdeveloped by U.S. standards, but not horrible. And generally speaking, it was a good experience. You can go on a lot of adventures there. Good surfing. And then went to Belgium, Brussels, Belgium. I worked at the new NATO headquarters facility there, which was really interesting. We had a lot of VIP guests that came through there. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd be having lunch with foreign dignitaries at times, or chatting with a general or a admiral or whoever else, and just carrying on really interesting conversations with these people from different countries. I think there was 30 nation states when I worked there, and there was representation from all these NATO partners, and you'd go have coffee and lunch together, meet people from all over. It was a really interesting time. And I liked being in Belgium because my sister was stationed in the Air Force in Spangalum, like a 2-hour drive away from me. So I'd go spend weekends with her in Bitburg for their beer festival, and she'd come over to the beer festival in Brussels, or we'd say, let's meet in Copenhagen this weekend, or let's go to Paris on the Thalys train, for a couple days. And being so close to my sister on the other side of the world was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And I was still working very closely with all the military elements and diplomatic elements that I had been before.
Mm-hmm.
I was still working with Marines and going to Marine houses and Marine parties, and so I didn't pull too far away from that community. Belgium, and then I went Lebanon. That was interesting.
And that's not such a stable place.
Yeah, I actually was in 2 different places, which you've heard a lot about them. But I was in Israel before, and I was in Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon, and Tel Aviv, Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get along very well.
No.
But seeing from both sides of the border what was going on, I got a unique perspective of the world that people talk about on NPR constantly. And I was there seeing the real-time effects and what was going on, receiving the rockets from Hamas. I was there for the port explosion in Beirut, but that's an interesting place in the world, and I won't get into any politics other than to say it was a very unique and insightful experience to be living in those places and learning about the cultures. So Israel, Lebanon, I was also, I went back to Belgium for a while, Mexico, Thailand, Chiang Mai, Thailand. It's a very peaceful, tranquil city compared to all the other ones. They get a little crazy, rambunctious, but Chiang Mai is more of like a spiritual place, and like in the hills and the mountains, and they have a lot of temples there, which I'd go sometimes to watch their Buddhist ceremonies and stuff. Very nice place. The people are unbelievably kind. I thought it was a facade at first, but once you're there for a couple months and people are still just being so nice, I was like, wow, they're really, really nice people here. Thailand's.
So what was the State Department doing there? I mean, it's not the capital or whatever.
There's at the capitals, there's the embassies.
Yeah.
And then outside the capital, there's often consulates.
Right. Okay.
So the consulate is run by a consular general, but falls under the chief of mission for the U.S. diplomatic mission in that country,
right,
in that host country, which is usually the ambassador and the charge, or DCM, deputy chief of mission, or maybe they're acting as charge. But then each consular general falls underneath the leadership of the ambassador to that country.
Yeah, and the consulates need security too, so
Yes.
you wind up there.
Yes. Almost all U.S. missions abroad now have some element of security, especially after the incident with Ambassador Stevens in Libya. I knew some people there in Tripoli when he went to Benghazi and that happened. They made some structural changes to the program to provide better response, like react times, and deployability, and standing up more personnel and mission readiness for diplomatic security. They made some serious adjustments to the program after that incident. But throughout this time, I made my, I kind of made my own way in the outside, but I didn't go far from my path that I was inside the military. And I think that gave me a lot of resolution to having to get out and move on with my life, because I still got to associate with all those people that I got to before. Wonderful friends to this day.
So how long did you do that kind of work?
Finish. Not technically finish. I'm still on call for things.
Okay.
But my last time I actually was at work, December last year.
All right.
But I've been undergoing some treatments through the VA, and I've been taking care of stuff that I kind of neglected for years. And now I'm seeing specialists and getting things taken care of here in the United States. So I kind of put a pause on any further international. I mean, I'd still travel, but yeah, I needed to take a break from it anyway, catch up with my family.
All right. And then you are also involved in the community here in the Grand Rapids area. What are you up to now? And but your shirt, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So Eric and I, the one I told you, we went to the Padres game 20-something years ago, 21 years ago or whatever. Him and I have been best friends for this whole time. We were in classes together. We were in squadrons next to each other. I'm from Michigan. He's from Michigan. Well, my family ended up in Flint, just out of circumstance. Before the water crisis, I was there. And so I used to come to Grand Rapids to visit with Eric. And he finally pulled me over. I bought a house, a really nice house in Grand Rapids, and moved here. And we've been involved with PTSD support groups and a lot of outreach, visiting people in hospitals. On our own time, we're just doing what we can to build that community that we had in the military. In the military, you have that community already built in. It's baked in the cake. You kind of get thrust into it. But on the civilian life, you lack that sense of community. And so we built our own. To some degree, there's a lot of organizations out there, but we decided to take our efforts and start putting it into an actual organization, and we named it Veterans Enrichment Task Force Services, because we're interested in enriching the lives of the veterans in the community, which the task force element, like, we often get calls from people in a panic. Hey, this person's in the hospital, this person needs help, this person. But we're here for the community, and we do outreach, and we, when we can, we feed homeless vets, and we're working on a housing initiative right now. We're starting with the duplex and applying for grants to start housing homeless veterans. It's an underserved community, and we can be players in that and actually, move the needle, as they say, on these issues. And you make friends, and you get involved with coalitions of other organizations. And it's not about my organization versus their. No, we all cooperate with each other. If you're a survivor, go here. If you're experiencing an addiction issue, go here. Or maybe they say, hey, we finished a program, come to these guys. These guys are going to help you with this. And we're in that community. We have that sense of purpose, that sense of community we need, and we're trying to build that and support the people who don't have it.
Because often, I guess, and I've talked to a lot of veterans with more recent conflicts and things, I talk about often not knowing where to go for support or who to talk to, or
Exactly.
getting frustrated trying to deal with one group and so forth.
Exactly.
And you're kind of helping to make the connections and get people with the right people to actually make things happen.
Exactly. Exactly. If you're the first person to talk to when you get out of the military, you know, like the first organization, the first veteran to me outside, you're in luck, because we have every resource, you know, whether it's Kent County veterans, we know the VA process, we know if you need a service dog, who to talk to, if you want to learn guitar lessons, if you need to go on a retreat, if you need a support group to talk through issues. We have partnerships with the whole community, and we'll direct you. This guy focuses on, you know, service dogs, and you don't have to pay for it. His organization is going to hook you up. Go over here. And they do the same for us. Yeah, we got our 501c 19 status, so our focus is military veterans.
All right. Normally I close out interviews by asking people to say something about how do they think their service experience affected them, or what do they take out of it. And on some level you've been saying a lot about that all along, but is there any kind of thought you want to close out this interview session with?
I always told everyone military service is 2/3 suck, 1/3 awesome. 2/3 of the time you're basically going to be hating your life. You're going to be scrubbing stuff, standing around, taking orders, getting barked at, getting yelled at, climbing something you don't want to climb, running somewhere you don't want to run, you know, getting your ass chewed for whatever reason. 1/3 of the time you're doing the most amazing stuff you can imagine. Is that 1/3 of the time worth the overall experience? I think most veterans would say yes.
All right.
It's a labor of love, and you got to pay for it. But I think most veterans would agree it was worth the experience. Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you very much for coming in and sharing it today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.